we've had our fingers shaken in our face and told no, 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 no. That wires in inhibitors, and what alcohol does, first thing it does is knock those inhibitors out. And that's why people do crazy behaviors on alcohol, because all those behavior prompts are there, but they're inhibited.
Yeah.
Alcohol hits, and the crazies come out. So
And
so
very
holding the space.
interesting. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very interesting how, of course, that being within me, I replicate a pattern marrying someone whose parents were alcoholics. His childhood friendships, they're all, him included, they're all alcoholics. So
Right.
because it's a resonance match for what's in mine. I don't
Yeah.
have an alcohol addiction, but it's, yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's up for healing. That's all. And thanks for the
Holding the
support.
space. Absolutely. Anybody else had your life impacted by alcohol? Have anything to share? Push that mute button. Share it if you do. Thoughts, questions,
Alcohol has not
observations?
affected life at all, Michael.
Okay, I believe you. She says with her tongue stuck in her cheek.
Yeah. I didn't want to say anything. I just wanted to joke about it. That's all.
Okay.
I mean, I get if I not funny, it's not funny at all. So I guess I maybe shouldn't joke about that. Um, it, it's a tough one to move through for sure. Um,
Big time. But do you know why angels can fly, Cami?
because they have wings.
No, because they take themselves lightly.
Ah,
And when you can, bring that lightness into such a serious topic, I think that can also create a space where breathing is easier and processing through whatever needs to be processed through can be more easily done. So, so joining you in taking yourself lightly and and
that
looking at this serious aspect of it and doing some serious work, but still recognizing that when we stand in that space of being, we can change the whole dynamic and the whole game individually and collectively.
and that's something that I've noticed with me a lot lately. I don't know if you noticed the change. I didn't used to be this serious, I don't think. Taking myself and others just so seriously. Um,
So, what
and so
thought
that's what I'm
disorders have you got going on that you've installed in your mind more recently that are so serious? And what's the forgiveness work that needs to be done to let those go? And of course, that's a rhetorical question.
right. It goes back to the same thing I've been working on for months, right? Acceptance and honoring self in spite of all my humanness.
It's a
Um,
big deal.
any other ideas?
Well, you might, seriousness when, you're the only one in the picture of your mind would tend to point toward maybe some serious judgments you've made about yourself that need to be forgiven. Maybe some pardoning of self for errors that you've made related to alcohol, and recognizing that yes, I've made errors, and I I can give myself the leeway that I wasn't in my right mind, and I'm committed to correction. And then, literally, aside from the forgiveness process, do some pardoning, i.e., letting yourself off the hook,
Oh,
knowing that you're real clear that
stop
any of
blaming.
those things you've got judgments about yourself about, you are forgiving, and you're clear that you're going in a totally different direction with your life.
Right.
Yeah.
And the past is gone.
Yeah.
And what's the point of beating myself up about it, right?
You got it. Of course, if one were inclined to beat oneself up about it,
This
that would
moment,
tend to
I'm sure
mean,
I'm healing,
yeah,
moving forward.
yes, and recognizing that the tendency to perhaps beat yourself up about something comes from most likely a power person dynamic where under stress, what did your power person do that you hated the most? Did they beat up on you?
One of them did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be where that sort of inclination
Physically
would come
and
from.
emotionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'd be the place to be forgiving. And if that's in your history and you're opening that up, that would tend to lead to some seriousness too until you've worked through those layers. So holding a space and joining you and working through those layers. Are you breathing?
Yes, sir.
Good. Awesome.
All right. I'm going to mute myself here.
All right. Holding a space.
Thank you.
Anybody else? You are welcome and deserving. Anybody else? Any thoughts? Anyone? Any observations about alcohol and how it's impacted your life or people around you? Anything to share that might be supportive? And push that mute button or unmute button and say hello. And if no one has another thought in that regard, then I had shared that I was going to move into the lesson on what is the world. So I'd like to just, we did a kind of a preview of that, recognizing, I'll just quickly make the reference to the metaphor that I talked about a couple days ago of, the person from the jungle standing in front of the prop plane, looking at a shiny silver disc, having a construct in his mind called perception that comes from his mind and exists nowhere in the world but his mind, but he believes it's there because he sees it. And whenever we hold, one of the functioning purposes of the mind is to convert thoughts into pictures. And so when we hold a thought disorder and that thought disorder is turned into a picture, we will see it as a picture painted on the inside of our eyeballs that we think is in the world. But it's not in the world except the lowercase w world, that is the world between our ears. And
Michael,
yes.
May I make one comment before you get into that?
Please, Celinda, go for it, young lady.
All right. I want to thank Cammie for her sharing because we seem to be on exactly the same level in relation to our beating ourselves up. And I just did a worksheet that I shared with Dr. Tim this morning about my daughter and my sadness, deep, heartfelt, heavy sadness of not having had these tools when she was born, so that I could appreciate her as the gift she was and the blessing she was. And I just didn't have the tools to know how to bond with her and raise her in a way. So that was beneficial to us both. But right in the middle of that workshop, that tool, the forgiveness tool that I was going through, I came upon, what's the feelings that you are coming up with after asking for Rucha's help? And I got this thought that said, how long do you want to carry this sadness, this grief, this whatever, frustration, this irritation, this whatever that's in your system? Wouldn't you just rather be happy and joyful? And it was just like, worksheet done. So now I get to practice being joyful and happy instead of grief-stricken, and to realize that if I'm crying in joy or in humor or in appreciation or gratitude or beauty or whatever, that I'm releasing those toxic energies just as well as releasing, and it's healing too. And so I don't have to beat myself up for being an ultra sensitive person who cries at the drop of a hat. I can now distinguish appreciation from sadness and just enjoy the tears, and other people can respond in whatever way they need to respond, and just have myself be okay, because I flow like a spigot. Ballet, horse race, John Sousa march, doesn't matter.
Right.
As well as in sadness. And now I can distinguish more. Okay, what is sadness and what is we need to be serious about, and do the tool work around, or make amends, or bring ourselves back into the present moment and say there's no past, there's no future. So it doesn't matter whether I'm trying to reach some goal in the future or I'm trying to recapture and redo the past. It's all the same thing. The only point of power is right now. And I know this in my head, but now I get to practice it.
Yeah, and my input would be to, when there is that tendency to tear up, for most people, there's also a tendency to tighten up, and to remember that as you breathe, that when you allow yourself to just soften and receive the breath is able to move more and more and more deeply into our tissue structure and bring correction at deeper and deeper levels. So the act of just softening, opening, and receiving, allowing the breath in as deeply as it will go, it can be a really sweet experience and gift to give yourself.
Oh, I appreciate that very much, because the allowing, I tend to think of it as one-dimensional with a specific situation, but allowing the breath to be received is no different than allowing the situation I'm in, whether joyful or whether I've interpreted it joyful or painful, and just go with the whole experience, breathing, softening, opening, allowing myself, whatever comes out from me, it's all good. It's all for edification. It's all for our entertainment, our joy. Why else would we be here in this dimension?
Well, of course, there's one other factor that comes in, and that is correction.
Right, exactly. Good.
And so
point.
just, I spoke a day or two ago about an insight that I got out of the intensive the 9-day intensive we just did, and that was that I've always talked about taking a breath, and it was in that intensive the difference between fully softening into a breath and receiving it rather than taking it just really impacted me. So that's why I'm sharing that thought.
Yeah, I really appreciated that one when I heard it on your show a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
I'm chewing on that one too, Michael. I'm an old
Joining you in
chewer.
receiving. There you go. Cool.
I chew
Awesome.
my cud, and I do a lot of regurgitating, but hey, it's all good. And that's it. Thank you, sir. Carry on.
All right. You have a blessed one.
Hey, Michael.
Yes.
This is Susan B.
Welcome, Susan B. How are you, young lady?
I'm fine. I just wanted to say, Celinda and Dr. Tim were talking in the previous radio show
Brian?
about the chemical composition of tears, and I read somewhere that tears of joy and tears of grief and tears of rage, sadness, all have different chemical compositions.
Yes.
I just
It's a
think
detox.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an eliminated organ. It's one of the detox pathways.
So I just wanted, I had
For sure.
put that in the chat from the previous radio show, but I wasn't sure if Celinda saw that. So yeah, you're
Right.
detoxing, but maybe you're doing different kinds of detoxing when you're crying for different reasons.
I just
Yeah.
decided, I had heard that too, Susan, and I'm really, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
You're loud and clear.
Oh, cool. And I agree with that. And I've just decided to be a little more inclusive with it. And how about just all of the above?
Yeah.
When the tears flow, I'm going to let them release whatever they want to release.
And when we're doing a still point breathing session, one of the pieces of input I give to people when tears start to come is if you can cry and breathe at the same time. They're both eliminative processes. Go for it. But if you have to choose one or the other, forget the crying and go for the breath, because the breath does a far deeper detox than tears alone will do. The breath will actually, like that. My take is the tears are literally exiting the toxic chemicals that come from our thought disorders, the energy that doesn't really belong in the system. And what the breath does is it takes things to the next level and cracks the mental constructs that draw us into behaviors based in those thought disorders. And so it takes the detox to the next level by far.
Good point.
So always rely on Brooke. She's the best. Any other thoughts on that topic for anybody?
Yeah, I just would like to say that I've started calling Rucha the birthing breath and the holy heart. Holy, W-H-O-L-L-Y.
Yes, I'd say that's exactly on target. It does. It gives us access to the wholeness, literally to the actuality. And when we can just receive and let actuality in, if we have these little constructs based in fear and rage and guilt and sadness and loss and pain and trauma, just the act of letting the energetic dynamic of the wholeness in means that it is transmuting or reorganizing us at the very core where mind energy is stored. So it facilitates the transmutation. The tears, just like the urine or bowel or skin, eliminate toxins, but the breath transforms what's behind them.
And the heart circulates it around.
Yes. And in terms of, and the heart, of course, circulates blood, but that's as far as it goes. Then we have this whole eliminative system called the lymphatic system. And the only pump, well, there are actually two pumps for the lymphatic system, which means eliminating the toxins that have been produced. One of them is the breath. The other one is movement. But there's no lymphatic pump as there is a heart pump for blood. And so definitely that breath is a key in the whole process.
What a great trinity, Michael.
Say it again.
What a great trinity.
Yes, I'll go for it. Any other thoughts for you, Susan? Susan B?
Well, I've been thinking about the latest essay you wrote.
Right.
And I sent you a drastically revised version. And my question is, did you intend for that to be a replacement of the other paper?
No, that little piece that I sent you was just a beginning point for the edit that I'm in the process of doing.
Okay.
So it was just the edit that you inspired, that you had me go back and look and start to integrate still a deeper level of understanding of the tools into what's it going to take to heal war in the planet, whether it's our personal wars or international wars or inter-community or inter-country wars, whatever they happen to be.
So is that piece one that you want me to send out for our support group, or you want to stick to the other one?
When you say that piece, I'm not sure what
that
like
one.
I had texted you and that text didn't go through, so I emailed you just that intro.
Yeah.
But if you want to send the original article that I sent you or the edited one, it is certainly shorter to read. Then, you know, either one of them would be fine for me for next week's meeting.
You mean the original one, not the,
right.
the latest one? Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I don't even know if I have the original one anymore. I may, but what I did send out was the edited one.
Perfect.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Hey, honored and delighted. Anyone else? Any thoughts on this topic while we're on the subject? Well, then and if you've got Course in Miracles book handy, you might want to get it out and go to the lesson, What is the World? And I actually don't even have the number of the lesson in front of me, so I'm not sure what lesson that is. I know over the years in speaking to different communities working with the Course in Miracles, most of them studying the Course, which I advise strongly against. Do not study A Course in Miracles. The Course in Miracles says the words cannot tell the truth. Why would we study something that can't tell the truth? That doesn't make any sense. And I've seen many people studying, trying to pretend those words must be true, and they're not true. Nothing you can say with words is true. They can give you instructions, but for me, my best understanding of the Course is the Course, as opposed to studying words, is about learning forgiveness. And so apply and learn forgiveness, and you're now using words for their real purpose, and that is they can give us direction, they can give us tools, they can accurately explain why words are futile and are never going to take us to the truth. And then it gives us directions, tools with which to come to the direct personal experience of the truth. And I've worked with many people who really have difficulty comprehending the first line of this lesson, what is the world? Because they've already made up their minds that, well, I'm looking out through my eyes at trees and people and populations and countries and buildings and roads and cars. I'm looking at the world, and therefore that's what we're trying to apply forgiveness to. And in one sentence, this lesson from the Course belies all of that and says, in essence, here's where you want to apply forgiveness. 5 words. Just 5. The world is false perception. If we were talking to the man standing on the tarmac in front of the airplane with the prop spinning, and he says, I want to go over there. I see that shiny silver disc. I want to go over there and feel what the friction feels like on my fingertips. In this context, we would say to this gentleman, sir, you are living in a false world, the world of false perception. Don't go put your fingers anywhere because you're living in false perception. There is no shiny silver disc. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't a capital W world that the Creator created. Many times people want to say, well, we created the world. No, the Course is really clear. It says, think not you made the world. Illusions, yes. So he'd say to the guy standing on the tarmac, think not you made those shiny silver discs. The illusion of one, yes. Think not you made propellers. That's the Creator's venue. But recognize that the world that virtually everyone lives in is false perception. It is a shiny silver disc, and there is no truth in it. When you realize there is no truth in that world, then you begin to apply the objective of the course, which is to learn forgiveness, to learn how to collapse that false world and come to the place where you live in truth, or there's a space for truth to enter rather than the world of false perception. So that lesson goes on, and anytime anybody's a thought or question, just jump in here. The lesson goes on and says, the world of false perception, is born of error. And it's not left its source. In other words, inside you. It's painted on the inside of your eyeballs. The world that we're looking to correct, the only world we want to apply forgiveness to, is the one painted on the inside of your eyeballs, the one that has not left its source. If you're in pain over something you think happened in the world, it's because the world of false perception is that you're seeing or experiencing is based in an energy that is not true, that is not accurate. It is born of error, and it's still inside of you. That's why you're hurting. And then it's, to me, it's really a hopeful statement when it says, again, the world of false perception, will remain no longer than the thought which gave it birth is cherished. And to me, this directly tells us that the mind converts thoughts into pictures. That world of false perception based on the inside of your eyeballs that seems to be so painful is nothing but a reflection of an error inside of you that needs forgiveness. But as long as you cherish the thought behind it, as long as you cherish, you think you need that to defend you or to be valuable or to, whatever the excuses are the mind has for keeping it, keep it up. And one of the challenges in giving it up is most people only see its effects, that is, the pictures painted on the inside of their eyeballs. They never visit the actual error behind it, the thought behind it that gave birth to that. And the thought is always a thought of separation. So this lesson goes on to say, when the thought of separation has been changed to one of true forgiveness, will the world be seen in quite another light. Now, I really wish when they'd done the punctuation, I understand the course kind of came through and there was little or no punctuation. And when they did it, I wish they had delineated when the course is talking about this world of false perception, where forgiveness is needed, and made that the lowercase w world. And then the world that the Creator created, a capital W world. So in this sentence, when the thought of separation changed to one of true forgiveness, will the world be seen in quite another light? And now we're talking about the capital W world. So when one has collapsed the projection, the pictures based on the thought disorders, then all of a sudden the capital W world will get a flash of what the actuality looks like. And that flash, this lesson goes on to say, is one which leads to truth, where all the world must disappear. Now we're back to the lowercase w world, so it can get a little confusing. The lowercase w world disappears and all its errors vanish. Now its source is gone and effects are gone as well. And to me, the genius of Yeshua to know that this whole game of false perception is based in goals. And that when, in the Aramaic language, the word forgive is shabag or shabak, it means to cancel. When the goal that's driving the mind to generate, to make the world, of course, delineates between making and creating. And that lesson, think not you made the world. Illusions, yes. Shiny silver discs, yes, we've all got them. We were trained from, inside the womb. to build those kinds of worlds. So now the false world disappears. And of course, because we happen to have a generational history with 1,000,000 goals unresolved, generation after generation after generation, the instant you collapse the world of false perception, you get a taste. You get what I like to refer to as a near-life experience. It's exactly the same thing as happens when clinical death occurs and somebody comes back and they call it a near-death experience, but it's not a near-death experience. It's a near-life experience where carbon-based memory in a clinical death situation collapses totally. All of its pictures are gone. And that's when people come back with stories of, wow, things they can hardly even fathom or speak of because they don't have the brain cells for it. They come back and try to explain it. If you've ever had a spiritual experience, you might remember when you had that spiritual experience and somebody said, well, what happened? And you said, well, and there were no words to talk about it because that ineffable world is wordless. And maybe over time, you kind of taught your mind how to speak about it a little bit. When clinical death occurs, that false world disappears. It's gone. Its source is non-functional. When one applies forgiveness and that perceptual world collapses, it always amazes me what people get in touch with, what's underneath it. And then the mind in an instant can snap back with, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I've got something else. I've got something else to suck you in. I've got something else. I've got something else. And so it takes time to step out of that which divides back into wholeness. And in this next paragraph in the course, it says the world, lowercase w, world, was made as an attack on God. So if we define God as wholeness, if we define that in which we live, move, and have our being and are designed to be in a full conscious relationship with continuously as the creator, then to shut that out is an attack. It symbolizes fear. And what is fear except love's absence? So literally, the world of pictures is based in fear. And when one collapses enough and no longer has need of fear and no longer holds the energetic patterns of fear within them with any sort of impetus, with any sort of strength. You know, each time you apply forgiveness around a particular issue, as I see it, what you're doing is you're literally weakening the fields based in fear and hostility. And in weakening those fears or those energetic patterns, you can more easily shake them off. So this lesson goes on, again, you know, what is fear except love's absence? Thus, this lowercase w world, this shiny silver disc, was meant to be a place where the creator could not enter and where we could be apart from that presence of love. And so this lesson very brilliantly says, here was perception born. For knowledge could not cause such insane thoughts. But eyes deceive and ears hear falsely. Now mistakes become quite possible, for certainty is gone. So perception is a construct of carbon-based memory. You go back into the scriptures and they talk about the mind of man. You look at that situation where Yeshua comes out of the Garden of Gethsemane, he talks to Peter, who's, wanting to kill the high priest servant, and Yeshua directly refers to Peter as Satan, and he says, "Get thee behind me, Satan." Now, he doesn't think Peter's turned into some kind of a demon, as the Greeks would try to tell us. But Satan in Aramaic means the resistor, one who misleads. So he says, get thee behind me, Satan, for you think in the mind of man. You're locked into perception rather than the plan of God. So eyes to see. Once we start to function out of this fear-based thought system, then the mind creates all kinds of shiny silver discs. Shiny silver discs about evil people, shiny silver discs about, what kind of crazies can you imagine in the world? And the next paragraph tells us what that is. It says the mechanisms of illusion have been born instead. Now, illusion in the Aramaic, the root of the word illusion, is not something that doesn't exist as our culture would kind of see it. But the root of the word illusion actually is measured. You remember in the scriptures, they said, as you measure, it will be measured unto you. If you measure in all kinds of fear and heap up criticism and hatred and vengeance on people, then your mind is going to measure back to you a world based in fear with all kinds of, the dynamics you've measured into your own mind. And forgiveness, if we could make up a word, I don't think there's a word unmeasured, but if you unmeasure something, if you apply forgiveness to something, then you remove that from your structure and your mind can no longer send back images based on that falsity. So with fear, we develop this world of perception, and now we live in pictures, constructs painted on the inside of our eyeballs that are reflections of the dynamics that have been measured into our energy systems for generations and generations and generations. That's why my take in the creation story, or the early Old Testament, they talk about this, pretty bright group of people who understand astronomy, especially. They've proven they do that. And they tell us that this group of people got lost in a 35 square mile hot sandy place for 40 years. And you say to yourself, wait a minute, how can you, if you know what astronomy is, if you know the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, how can you get lost in a 35 square mile area for 40 years? I mean, that's silly. But when you realize that the word desert is a code word for the unconscious, then most people live in what's been measured into their unconscious, those things based in fear and hostility that engage this mechanism of illusions and creates this shiny silver disc world of pain and trauma. And that, to me, is like such a huge chunk of information. Just anybody, is that fit? Is that making sense? Anybody have any thoughts?
Hey, Mike.
Or question?
Can you
Go
hear
for
me?
it.
It's Joe.
You're loud and clear. Hey, Joe, welcome, sir.
Hey, how you doing?
Good to hear your voice. I'm rocking, doing well.
You're always rocking.
I'm always rocking.
I wanted to just add in, yes, it's loud and clear. And I for me, two things: to look at the dis-ease, to be in the dis-ease.
Right.
That I pass that over. I, have this tendency to, let's say some mantras or let's say some affirmations. No.
Spiritual bypass.
Yeah, exactly. There it is. The spiritual bypass. And the other, what occurred to me recently is in line number 7 here, paragraph 2. Now mistakes become quite possible. And the key word for me is certainty. Certainty.
Gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
So I guess my question to you is, how would you define what is the certainty?
Well, my offering would be when we are standing in a space of being in direct relationship with that in which we live, move, and have our being, there's just that. It's like, certainty is a word that comes from the illusion that, it sort of points towards something,
Yeah.
But if you are in full-blown relationship with the conscious active presence of love that you are, and you are consciously connected to that in which you live, move, and have your being, you have certainty of everything, although that would probably be a pretty puny word. The one example the Course uses, it kind of relates for me, is, who would try to fly with the tiny wings of a sparrow when the wings of an eagle have been bestowed on them?
Mm.
So in our language, in our puny language, we say certainty, but that would be like, an ant-sized word compared to
Yeah. Mm.
wholeness, to true wholeness.
Well, I think it has a vastness, this aspect of no horizon, or this infinite,
Good word.
the infinite certainty. We could have, added an adjective there. I don't know, but it's just this aspect of like you said, when I'm in that state of being, okay, wonderful. When I'm in the state of dis-ease, I can't say enough about not running from it, or not embracing it. Really, I mean, to say
Hold
that,
the space for it.
right, to hold the space of that.
Yep.
So
Yeah, to apply forgiveness and collapse the surface mind's picture and allow what's beneath it to emerge, and have the objective of the love exchange that we do,
yeah,
to have the ability to stay connected, to have the strength to stay connected to that, while perhaps some ancient horror based in unresolved generational fear comes forward. That takes some serious practice, and to me, that's one of the deep reasons for community. In Aramaic, the words that have been translated as the kingdom of heaven really speak more of the community of love. To have a community of people, if I lose it, if this is like this, which is emerging from me as a memory, is just too big to handle, thank God I've got a community I can turn to who can literally, energetically extend the energy of love toward me and uplift me, support me, and hold me in that place. To me, that's monumental.
no, it's the other thing for me that works is to close my eyes, and or to, the mind and body, my whole energy system seems to be quite the receiver and quite the emitter of energy. And if I just quiet each of the antenna, one being the eyes, to close my eyes and be quiet with the dis-ease, and like you say, hold it in a space,
And breathe.
and breathe, and bring it to love and breathe. Yeah, it's one step that I think is important to, because things get very confusing, because, I want to look at the disease. Well, you don't want to physically look at it. I want to close my eyes and be with it.
Be in the energy.
Be in that energy of the goo or the muck or whatever is not, I'm not at peace. So.
And make sure you breathe.
Big fan.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, my friend.
Talk catch. Bye.
Nice to say hello. Okay, lots of love. Blessings. Bye-bye. Anyone else? Any thoughts at this point? To me, this is perhaps the most important, or at least one of the most important lessons in the Course. The one that instructs on how to forgive, I think, is really of monumental importance. But this lesson is just huge. Has it aroused any questions for anybody at this point?
Yeah, for me, not a question,
Go for it.
but one last thought. It just hit me when you were talking about the Garden of Gethsemane, and Yeshua saying to Peter, "Get thee behind me," and healing the ear of the high priest servant. That is a very different Yeshua than the one that was talking to the Pharisees and saying, "You hypocrites, you sepulchres, a
sepulcher, yeah.
And decay, decay and destruction. For me, that enlivened Yeshua even more, that he had his own path to trod. I have my own path to trod. It's all one way with a capital W, but we each have our individual paths, and it deepened my respect for him profoundly to just envision the difference between with him doing his work, between his approach to the Pharisees and being in the temple and stuff, even though that wasn't the way the traditional New Testament shows it, then when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, the work that he did in between those two, that's not recorded, but must have been a lot of work, Michael.
I'm sure he did his share, and then some. And of course, we're told he sweat blood. That's got to be one of the deepest healing crises one could ever be in. And it's interesting, the story where he confronts the money changers and all in the temple. Many people take that as a display of anger, but in Aramaic, there's no display of anger in that situation. The Greeks interpret the word frigla as a whip, but in the Aramaic language, the word frigla, it would be more like a little broom. You'd sweep chickens. You had a dirt floor home, and you'd sweep chickens out of the house with a frigla. That's what he had. He was cleaning up the temple, but he went in with clarity and power. A lot of people, he was angry. Oh, I don't see anything that indicates he was angry. He was sure clear that he was going to confront the insanity, and he was going to speak directly to it, but it wasn't from a space of anger. Many people use that to justify their anger and to pretend that anger can be useful, and it is one of the most destructive energetic dynamics on the planet, besides being an anesthetic, a drug. Anyone else? Any thoughts? Well, let's go back to the next paragraph. So the section speaks about how eyes deceive, ears hear falsely. Now mistakes become possible. Why? The mechanisms of illusion have been born instead. In other words, as I measure something in, if it's based in hostility or fear, it's going to be measured back to me. And once I do that, then I send out, there's a whole section in a whole lesson in the course that talks about the quality of messengers that we send out. And this particular paragraph refers to, and now they go, that the mechanisms of illusion, they go to find what's been given them to see. They've been given them a purpose, and remembering that perception is always a servant of purpose. And if I have a purpose to make one guilty, then I'll always find perceptions. I'll create shiny silver discs that will justify that. And if I recognize that my purpose is to heal, then I'll create shiny silver discs that will support me in the healing process. But when you realize, let's review that Harvard research goes way back in the 50s. It's never been refuted. And they showed that in a time frame, they got people hooked up to electrodes, and in a time frame where there are 10,000 brain cells firing, the max amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits of data. When you realize you're looking at 9 bits of data out of 10,000 brain cells firing, you realize you're looking at evidence. And so what this section's saying is that now that illusions have been born, they'll go to find what they've been told. They'll follow the goal they've been given, even if they have to hallucinate the evidence to prove that there's something terrible going on. So the aim of these messengers that are sent out, if they're sent with hostility and fear, then they go to it. If I remember correctly, the passage speaks of those sent through fear and trained through fear return with gorges filled with things that are rotten. that they're going to go find what the corruptible it speaks of. So these messengers, their aim is to fulfill the purpose the world was made to witness and make real. And so if we live in a world where our objective is to create a witness for my justification of living in the one world universal religion of blame, guilt, fault, shame, then I can fill this shiny silver disc with all kinds of evidence and witness that that's true. And what this passage says is they, that is the messengers, see in the illusions of the world but a solid base where truth exists, upheld apart from lies. So now illusions, now shiny silver discs, become the foundation of one's ability to think, quote unquote. And then what this lesson does is tells us the truth about that. Yet everything they report is but illusion, which is kept apart from truth. If I can bring my illusion to the truth, how do I do that? Michael, how do you do that? So I have this perceptual construct about, Bill over there's to blame for what's going on in my physiology and my pain and my upset and my disturbance. And I recognize I have a goal for Bill, to do ABC, whatever it is. Then I apply forgiveness. I cancel that goal, and the shiny silver disc in my mind, at least for an instant, collapses. And now I bring what is underneath it, no longer held apart from lies. I bring the lies to the presence of love. Remember in step 4 in the worksheet, you key in, you connect yourself to the active presence of love. And as you do that, and allow yourself to look at what's underneath it, to bring the illusions to truth, they simply begin to dissolve in the presence of active love in the breath. And tomorrow or Monday, we'll start out with paragraph 4 in that passage, what sight was made for. In the meantime, we'll be holding the space for you to have an awesome weekend. Thank you for joining us. Oh, by the way, it looks like the 21st, I believe it is, of November. It's a Friday, November. I believe it's the 21st.
You told me the 14th to the 29th, or the 14th to the 22nd this morning.
You're kicking in and out, Jeannie.
You told me
Can you try that again?
November 14 to 22 is what you said this morning.
That's it. Okay, 14 to 22, that's it. So it looks like we're going to rent the facility again in Abingdon for a 9-day intuitive development intensive, 14th of November. So put it on your calendar. Plan to come and join us. We'll give you more details. And thanks for joining us. Have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Blessings. Bye.